Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 305 Insights. I'm your host, Alan Somerton. I'm joined today once again with Eric. And right off the bat, we're doing something different this week, and we're diving into our quarterly reports for the NFL and college football. Basically, we're going to dive in, see what's caught our eye, whether it's both good or bad, and we'll go from there. So, obviously, we're going to lead off with the NFL. So, Eric, start us off. Who's caught your eye? What's going on in the NFL in your eyes?
So the way I want to break it down for you guys is kind of like looking at the 4-0, 3-1s, the 2-2s, the 1-3s, and we don't want to talk about the 0-4 teams, but looking at the 4-0 teams. First things first, no one's surprised by the Bills. No one's surprised by the Eagles. I think both of those teams are in the. I wasn't surprised. The only reason why I would see them falling off is from a chaotic injury to maybe Josh Allen, or even an injury to, you know, Barkley to the Eagles. But those teams are just well-rounded teams. There's no surprise from them. Looking at the 3-1 teams, though, I think I'm going to put in the category is happy/surprised. The first one I'm going to talk about is the Rams. They currently are 3-1. Now, that being said, how did they get to 3-1? The teams that they faced off, they first won against the Texans, which was a 14-9. I always like to use the first week of the year as like it's a gimme. It's like you're still trying to get to know what your team is like. You're coming back from training camp, but um, then you're looking at the Tennessee Titans, which they beat them promisingly, and then we talk about that Eagles game, which block field goal to win the game. I think it was a very block. Block. So, and then they bounced back and they beat the Colts. Now, looking at the scores and looking at the teams they played, the first thing that sticks out to me is like, all right, a lot of these teams are kind of on the downsend or not really too sure. The only team that's a well-established team that they win against was the Eagles. But the biggest thing that does catch my eye is how they're winning. It's those close games and the veteran side of it. Looking at Matthew Stafford, if he stays healthy, I've said it before on the pod that this is a dark horse team going into the year. Good little call out. I think this next quarter of the schedule of the season is going to be some good challenges. The first one coming up this Thursday against the Niners. It's a division game. It's going to say a lot about if they win their division. I'm very intrigued on looking at how they come out against the Niners. But once they get past that, they have the Ravens, which are descending, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Then they got the Jags, which the Jags are also a 3-1 team, but I think it's a little bit of a fraud, I would say, of how they're at a 3-1. And then looking at the Saints, which they're an 0-4 team. If they're able to, the biggest I'm looking at is the Niners. Looking at the Bucks, the Buccaneers, this is the one that I'm happy. Makes me happy inside. I think I can speak for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. Seeing Baker Mayfield being successful in the way he's being successful, it just brings joy to my heart. Seeing that he's getting his fourth chance and striving under an offense and a team that the culture is just built around. A couple of the games that they won and how they got to 3-1. You're looking at first they win against the Falcons, division game, they end up winning. They go to the Texans, they win close again. Then they go to the Jets and they win close again. And then the Eagles was another close game, but they lost. But the Eagles are obviously a great contending team. I'm surprised. I'm not gonna say I'm surprised, right? But I'm just happy to see the storyline of Tampa losing their offensive coordinator and able to just bounce back. And even with the injuries, Because let's talk about the injuries as well. You're going into the season with Chris Godwin not being able to play because he's still recovering from a knee injury from the year before. And then you go ahead and lose Mike Evans for about 3 to 4 weeks. But they're still able to be persistent in still moving that ball and still moving forward. Now, that being said, it is not a sprint, it's a marathon, but we're just talking about what the quarter looked like. And coming out of the gates, I'm extremely happy to see the Bucks going into the season. Um, Looking at the next quarter, they got two really tough games. They got three really tough games. They got the Seattle Seahawks at Seattle. They got the Niners, and then they got the Lions. Those three games are going to really get. We're going to get a really good grasp of how this team's going to mold going into the midway point of the season. So that's my happy and surprised team for the 3-1. Before I move into what's intriguing, the intriguing teams of the season, I do want to get like a little bit of your feedback on that, Alan. Of what kind of sticks out for those two teams, the ones that I'm bringing up just now.
I think the important thing you touched on a little bit for Los Angeles is their division right now is it's theirs for the taking, in the sense that the Cardinals aren't there yet. Seattle's not there yet. And the Niners, once again, are doing their annual, man, what if, what if all these guys stayed healthy? We're starting
Hmm.
that pathway again. Again, I think it's fair to say that if the Niners were healthy, they'd be the easy favorites for the division.
Absolutely.
The problem is now, like, the people who don't usually get hurt again, like Brock Purdy's hurt, you know. Trent Williams looks like he's at the and again, this is when I say this is comparing Trent Williams to the rest of his career, which is a high bar
High
for
par.
an
Yeah,
offensive
exactly.
lineman. This guy's a future Hall of Famer. He's on the downside. Now, the downside of Trent Williams is a lot better than, 85% of the left tackles in the league. But when you have all these injuries, when your main thing is Christian McCaffrey running the ball and all these different things and protecting the quarterback, like, and again, going up against someone like the Rams with Jared Verse, you
And
know,
don't forget Ricky. Don't forget about Ricky because Ricky's also banged up too.
yeah.
He's,
So you
he's
so
got
you
an
don't
he's got a
you
knee
don't have
issue.
Ayuk, you don't have Jennings fully healthy, you don't have so the team's in shambles, right? Right now, again, if Stafford stays healthy and they're doing a good job so far of protecting him, so to speak, with the offensive line and whatnot, they're still somewhat balanced, even though Williams hasn't really had that type of year that everybody's expected to have. Corum slowly eating away in terms of the carries per game. He's starting to get a little more here and there, but I think that's a good thing. That means you have two healthy backs. We're seeing what's happening with Arizona. They've already lost their top two backs. You have to have the ability to withstand injury. And right now, Puka Nacua is playing at the level that you expect him to. Devontae Adams has been a welcome addition, and that defense is still strong. So I don't see why the Rams can't continue this. I mean, who's to
I,
say that any of these guys are going to get healthier?
I would
Go ahead.
also like to add. I would also like to add that you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's like the division's up for grabs because let's just talk. Like this is the opportunity to attack the window while it's open because those guys that you just brought up for the Niners, they're gonna get healthy again. I mean, I'm obviously not the James Conner or like from looking at Arizona, but talking
Benson's going
about
to
the
be out for
Niners,
4 weeks. I mean, he might come
eh,
back healthy, but again, like we're already going to be halfway through the season.
I would look at the Niners that they're gonna get healthy because then you got George Kittle coming back. Then you also have Brandon Ayuk coming back, and you're taking a little bit of the the workload off of Ricky and relying on Ricky and Greg. I almost said Greg Jennings, but Joanne Jennings. Um, it does help out, but like you said, if you are able to
But that's
capitalize
also
on
when
getting
McCaffrey's going to go down once all those guys come
exactly.
back.
So into the point of why I would say a little bit surprised of the Rams being in this situation. Yes, there's things that happen that are way out of your control, but I do have the Rams winning the division if they are able to capitalize on this quarter that they're coming into the football season.
Yeah.
But
And then
the,
speaking of the other
yeah,
team, with the Bucks, again, talk about a division. I mean, the Bucks barely have to try and they're gonna win that
hmm
division. But
yep,
besides that point, you're seeing an organization that trusts, even though he's like 61 years old, you're trusting Todd Bowles on the defensive side, and they're capitalizing on this Baker Mayfield thing. They draft Emeka Ibuka, and he's looking like he's hitting the ground running. Even if he doesn't consistently perform at the output that he is now, because Mike Evans is going to come back, and Godwin's back, and even though I think there's reports that Irving was walking around on crutches,
yes,
he's
yes,
probable to play. It doesn't mean he's like out for a while, but still, you have White and Sean. I forgot what his last name for the running back. You have two capable running backs behind Bucky Irving, so
hmm
it's clear, that they're going in on the offensive side and they're making sure that Baker can, continue that 40 touchdown output type range. Again, not saying he's going to reach 40 again, but if you can get to that 35 range, especially in a division with the Panthers and the Saints and the Cardinals, where your toughest competition is Atlanta and you already have a win over them, they just got to, again, like just stay healthy and keep on approaching the game the way they've approached it, and they're going to be fine, even if they go 9-8, honestly.
okay. So moving into the team that is very intriguing, I have two teams that are intriguing, which kind of make me think they kind of fall on base of what history has shown me in my whole entire life of watching and following these teams from a distance. First one is the Chargers. Chargers are 3-1. They come into the games hot with beating the Chiefs. It was a big statement to make it. Now, obviously, looking at the injuries and the Chiefs at that time were in a downward. They're still trying to get a grasp of what their identity is going to look. Uh, but that being said, then they come back, they beat the Raiders, then they beat the Broncos. Then there was a surprise there for the Giants that they lose to the Giants. Now, I can toss it up to, they start a rookie quarterback. It's an away game. People are a little bit antsed up. Still got to win that game. That's it, it's which is why I find the Chargers so intriguing because it's the losing to the Giants. It's such a Chargers thing to do. These are the type of losses that we look at in the end of the season when there's wild card playoff implications, and then they end up losing a game that they should have won. So that's why I do find intriguing. Now, good call out to talk about the Chargers looking at the next four games. They play the Commanders, they play the Dolphins, they play the Colts, and they play the Vikings. Now, the biggest aspect of going into that next quarter is the injuries that they have occurred in this first quarter. How is that O line gonna bounce back, or how are they gonna respond to the injuries that they've had going into it? Because, you know, diehard Dolphins fan here, Dolphins do have a great D line. How are they going to be able to block that? Colts have a very respectful defense as well of owning in the trenches. And then you have the Vikings being ran by Brian Flores. Those are going to be three great testing teams to understand how are the Chargers going to bounce back, because right now they have the upper hand of the division. They went Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos. Those are three divisional games that they won. They are currently 3-0, but now looking at what that this next four games, how are they going to look and how are they going to respond? Which is why I find it so intriguing. Alan, your thoughts on that?
Again, I take offense to the way you're approaching the Chargers in the sense of, um, during our pre-tape discussions, you accuse them of being fraudulent, and again,
History has shown.
y- history doesn't have them being led by Jim Harbaugh.
Uh,
History doesn't have them having a quarterback like Justin Herbert. You've had Philip Rivers, and whatnot. But again, the coaching of Jim Harbaugh, you, sir, are a man of culture. You cannot tell me that Jim Harbaugh has not had an influence on that culture.
I'm sorry to cut you off for a sec there, but can we talk about how he's just letting Justin Herbert rip the ball
Sling
across
the
the
rock. Okay, so
Yeah, he's
so this goes into what I was gonna say. You lost Slater for the year at left tackle. You're all pro tackle or whatever you want to call him that you paid franchise money for, and he immediately tears his Achilles or had that leg injury. He's out for the year. Joe
Mhm.
Alt moves, who's your great right tackle, who was a left tackle in college, moves over to left tackle, has a high ankle sprain. Now he's out for a few weeks. I think there is, and this is also to me a positive sign that Harbaugh's realizing I don't have the monsters up front, so I may not be able to do what I want to do in the sense of same thing he always did in Michigan, hand the ball off. You have Najee Harris, who's also out for the year. You have Omar Hampton, who's a really good rookie running back, but you brought back Keenan Allen, who has great chemistry with Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnson is still not entirely catching everything thrown his way, but he's significantly improved this year. And at this point, your number one is now your number three in Lad McConkey. I feel bad for everybody who drafted him. But he's clearly like, I mean, he's clearly basically, I know he's not a slot guy, but that's how he's being treated in terms of a statistical measure. Um, but again, I think that if you're going to give the 49ers a little leeway for injuries, Alt's going to be back in a few weeks. Even if he's back in a month, he's going to be
Mhm.
back. Khalil Mack, despite his arm bending in a way that it shouldn't bend, is somehow going to be back, allegedly, according to reports, in a few weeks. If you bring back those guys, I think 2 weeks. I think I think it's going to be best off for them because Khalil Mack, he is not the game breaker that he once was, but the key to me was Derwin James, who is arguably the best safety or a top tier safety in the NFL, spoke about Khalil Mack's leadership and how the
Mm.
way he comes in, does film study, does the things that you don't expect a
Culture.
guy who's been in the league for a decade and has made a boatload of money who doesn't need to do this. Everybody has to look at him and say, well, if that guy's doing it, I have to do it type thing.
Are you saying he wears his heart on?
Listen, he's got the lunch pail. He's got the hard hat. He
Yeah.
clocks in. He's the first one in and the last one out.
Turns
Okay.
off all the lights.
Yeah. And the
Turns off
janitor's
all
like,
the
no, no,
lights.
go home, sir. That type of thing. So I do think that, again,
It
like,
looks intriguing, man. That's why I'm looking at it because it's the turning point of the organization. It just depends
I think it's
on
intriguing because if they respond to this, it's really going to flip the narrative of the franchise as a
yes.
whole. And that means that Harbaugh has really, like, turned this whole thing around in the sense of we always used to laugh at it back in the day. Philip Rivers was always down four with no timeouts where you couldn't kick a field goal. Like you had to drive,
Yeah, yeah.
70 yards with no timeouts and 45 seconds left on the clock. And it's all right, go, Philip. And it's like, what do you expect him to do? But it's the same games that you talk about. Like that's what'll happen. Like in these like wild card games or whatever. That's the type of game they would always lose. But I digress.
So next team that I do find that's like a little bit intriguing to me. I just it kind of goes into what we were just talking about with the Chargers is the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to ask you this question. Are you buying Well, before I even answer, yeah, I'm going to ask you this question. I'm going to do a little rebuttal, and then I want to hear your comeback. Are you buying or selling on Jordan Love? Now, this is where I'm torn with it. I want to buy. I really do. And because I see little spurts of like, oh wow, this guy can be general. He can be an elite quarterback. Now, what stops him is the youth and age of his wide receiver core and the injuries that happen to his wide receiver core. So I'm still not bought in on Jordan Love completely, but I also look at what has the Packers given him. They haven't given him a true number one receiver, but they do have a solid run game. And with the tight end room that they do have, I also look at their defense. Their defense has not been consistent enough for me to buy in. But with that being said, I'm going to turn it to you. Are you buying or are you selling on Jordan Love?
Well, I'm glad you asked the question and then answered it. So that really gives me a lot of room to work with. But in all honesty, regardless of what you're going to say, I'm buying Jordan Love
Oh,
because I don't think, talk about historically. I mean, historically, when did the Packers support Aaron Rodgers with a number one wide receiver? I mean, you had
mm,
certain guys, but did anybody really expect like Jordy Nelson to be a number one? Like that's not really like a guy that you expect to go all out. And the same thing is starting to develop over the career of Jordan Love. They're highly dependent on Matt LaFleur scheming things up, and and then they get the number one wide receiver, or they get the first round wide receiver this year, and it's a kid from Texas who
got
is like,
blown up on a punt return.
but
Did you
he's
see that?
also, yeah, he's spun into a spear. Um, Presented by Bill
Goldberg.
Goldberg, and yeah, but it's just one of those things where like you didn't get him like I'm not even saying someone crazy, but like a Romeo Dunze from like
Yeah.
Washington going to, and I mean Washington Huskies in college, going to
Mm,
Chicago. Like he's a solid wide receiver. He put up great numbers, and it's different from DJ Moore, and
mhm.
like you just have a bunch of the same guys on that team, except for what's his name, Christian Watkins or something.
Christian Watson, I think, or
Watkins, something like
something.
that. Yeah, but he's like the 6'4" guy who always tears his ACL. That's the problem with him. But he's the big guy
No,
that
it's
you
his hamstring.
expect.
It's his hamstring.
Yeah, it's
He
always lower
always
leg. Well, he did tear his
yeah.
ACL one year, but like he
Did it?
always
Oh,
has,
okay.
yeah, he always has like those lower leg injuries where, but coming out of college, you weren't just like, oh, that guy needs to be like, Mr. Number One. He kind of developed into that big play wide receiver, but is that more of LaFleur versus, it's just one of these franchises that really like tries to be, great value type thing, like we're not
Mhm.
going to
Yeah.
shop brands, we're going to shop off brand stuff. We're going to get Publix brand, we're going to get great value. We're not going to get, the Tropicana orange juice, we're going to get the Publix orange juice. It's like, okay, come on, like every once in a while you do have to take that risk. And speaking of that, you took the risk by trading away draft assets, draft capital, as the kids say now, to get one Micah Parsons. And the thing that I find intriguing about the Packers is it seems like they played to their competition, because
Right?
one week
That's a good call out.
you go up against the Browns and it's a 10-10 slugfest. And then you're just like, man, okay, well, that defense is still really good. So what's going to happen against the Cowboys? Oh, it's a 40-40 tie. Now wait a minute now. Like again, I know
Without a
Cleveland.
CD Lamb.
Yeah. And it's just like, hey, they've got one guy in Pickens. What do you do? Let him go for 150 and 2 touchdowns. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like, so
exactly.
it's just
So
a
but
weird
that's what I'm
thing
saying.
where,
It's always like inconsistency, which is what makes me very intrigued looking at the next 4 games. They got the Bengals, Cards, uh, Steelers, and Panthers. 2 out of the 4 is a slam dunk. I feel like those are almost like locks of the week based off of the 2 organizations of Bengals where they're at the quarterback situation and health wise, and then the Panthers being the Panthers. Steelers, I'm very that's a game that I would want to watch, and then the Cards, they still have a good defense, so it's still gonna be something of a. It's not like a walk in the park. It's not a slam dunk, but those are the teams that I'm looking at that were 3-1. My happy and surprise, my intriguing teams. The next ones that I do want to talk about, which it's going to be a brief little high look into it. The team that I have two teams that are intriguing that are 2-2, and one of them being the Chiefs. Chiefs came out of the gate slow. I think the Chiefs are just the Chiefs. Um, you know, they're they came out, they injury. It's one of those that okay, hey, we still got the same people here. We still have got the same head coach. We still got the quarterback. We still got the same running back room.
They're an
We got a
NBA
strong
basketball
defense.
team. It's what they are. Like, that's the best way to
That's a good
put
way
it.
to put it.
Like,
That's a good way to put it.
the September for them is training camp. Like, I'm sorry. Like, until November, December come around, and then, they're not in the playoffs or, they're outside looking in, cause for concern. But right now, it's just one of those things, like you said, same coach, best quarterback in the league, doesn't have the weapons, but he hasn't had those for a while at this point. Defense is still solid.
That's what I was going to say. A lot of people overlook the consistency of that defense. And just looking at the schedule, the next 4 games, they got Jags, Lions, Raiders, and Commanders. They could easily go 3-1 or 4-0 these next games because they got all the weapons that they need. Defense is still playing their defense, and you have Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league.
Listen, defense
In
wins
my opinion, I think,
championships, but it
yeah,
doesn't win the ratings block, and that's the problem.
and that is the problem. The next team that I do want to bring up that is 2-2 that I find very intriguing are the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, they came out the first 2 games of the season. They went against the Vikings, right? Lose a close game. Second half of that game, they finally woke up, which let's toss it back up to it being week 1, brand new head coach with Caleb Williams coming off of a sophomore, coming off of a rookie year of whatever that was that we saw with the coaching staff that he had there. Then you go get destroyed by the Lions, which is a Lions organization and a team and a roster that knows their identity and very confident of what they're doing. But that being said, the next 2 games, they could have easily mailed it in with the Cowboys. But the why that Cowboys one sticks out to me, yes, Cowboys are absolutely, as the kids would say, dog water when it comes to defense, right? But you still put up 31 points on them. You put up 31 points. You almost put the same amount of points that the Green Bay Packers did. I don't know. That's just something to be talked about. And then to go on and then beat the Raiders by, it was by 1 point, 25-24, close game, but still, it's the momentum of looking at the team and the identity of the team and what Ben Johnson is bringing to the group. That's why I find it super intriguing to me because I want to see that culture shift of the Bears. I mean, I see it from afar. I'm bought in. Ben Johnson is one of the biggest reasons why Jared Goff came back into his career. I think Jared Goff I think he's a good quarterback, but the fact that Ben Johnson was able to coach him to be where he's at now, there has to be some credibility towards the coach as well.
Okay, to be fair, like, I did make a Super Bowl before Ben Johnson. But that being said, I think to your point, let's make this very clear. They're intriguing, not in the sense of you expect them to make the playoffs.
Exactly.
What is needed to be seen this season is exactly what you said, the culture shift. Where can you project this team moving forward? And when I say moving forward, not the next 4, 5, 6 games, the next few years,
Uh-huh.
because you have,
The pieces, there's
you have the
pieces.
QB, you have 3 wide receivers, 2 of them are young.
Hmm.
You're gonna like, and you got the new hot guy in terms of like the OC that's gonna be the coach. Where do they go from here? That's why
Two
they're
young
intriguing
tight
in that
ends.
sense. Yeah.
Also 2 young tight ends
A
as
lot of
well. So
weapons for him to work with, you just need a competent defense.
and D-line is great. Like, we see the foundation and the pieces coming in. That's why
But
I'm very intrigued.
you talk about, the Chargers and their whole franchise in general. Talk about a franchise that does not care about QB play. If Ben Johnson develops Caleb Williams into something decent, he'll go down as the greatest statistical quarterback in Chicago Bears history. And the sad part is me saying that isn't like a hot take or an over exaggeration.
Yeah. Um, Looking at the next 4 games, they got the Commanders, Saints, Ravens, and Bengals. They can easily go 3-1 or 4-0, easily. So that's why I look at the halfway point. They can be a 2-loss team or a 3-loss team at the halfway point in a very tough division. So I do find that that's my biggest takeaways for the 2 and 2s, and then to wrap it all up for the 1s and 3s. Teams that are 1 and 3, surprised. I'm back to that. There's no happy, surprised. The Ravens. The Ravens. I mean, look, a lot of people are speculating. I saw some reactions that questioning of Lamar's hamstring, right?
That was
There's
surprising.
there was a big narrative of did he quit? I don't think he did. I I don't want to believe that, but I will say that if they don't get it together, we're going to see a new coach. We're going to
You're
see a new coach. There's a small window, and that window just drastically got smaller with what we're seeing because they got to really turn things around. Alan, I see you just want to scream into that, but go ahead, tell me.
okay, so we've had a lot of these discussions off air. I think John Harbaugh needs to go. And when you talk about window, it's the same thing that I told you. Unfortunately, with these elite teams, everybody's in a race against time, but the elite teams are in a different type of race. And we talked about it with Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's prime is for a few more years before maybe, he's probably got a good 5 years left, right?
Yeah,
But at a certain point, it's the diminishing returns of like where you're going in the playoffs. You can blame it on Lamar, which is fine. I will never erase that Chiefs game from my memory. That to me was coaching malpractice of not running the ball and pretending like you guys are an air raid offense against the Chiefs. Number two, in an alternate universe, Shador Sanders is starting for the Ravens. Because remember the rumor was a few weeks ago that the Ravens were going to draft him and he said, "Oh, I
mm,
want to go somewhere I can start." But anyways, I do think unfortunately this is the year that the Ravens are going to fall off because they can't stay healthy on defense. They're dropping like flies left and right. And even when they were healthy in that opening game, they looked good for about 3.5 quarters. And then it's been a microcosm of the season in that, like, tell me how the Chiefs get right game on offense was against the Baltimore Ravens. Who would have thought that coming into the season? That the Chiefs would have been
not on my
struggling.
bingo card.
There you go. It's just one of those things where coming into the season, if you told someone, "Hey, the Chiefs would be struggling," and the way they break out of it is against the Ravens defense.
I also and just to close it out on the Ravens, looking at the next 4 games, they're tough. First, you got the Texans, which, mind you, offensively, they don't look up to par, but that defense is still very respectable.
I have to show you something. I wish I saved it of the the Houston Texans offense. There was 3 people rushing. They 4 guys blocked 1 guy, 2 guys blocked each other, and then the tackle immediately sacked, CJ Stroud.
Yeah. But with that being said, is the Texans are gonna beat the Ravens because strictly that their defense is gonna be able to it's an I mean, I don't wanna get caught up in one game, but you're looking at the Texans, which is gonna be a tough game. You're looking at the Rams, which we've already talked about before. You've you got the Bears, which they're extending into looking better, and then you got the Dolphins, which we don't know what we're gonna get out of that. But with that being said, perfect transition into what's the team that is 1 and 3 currently, and it's intriguing to me. This one hits home to me, the Dolphins. And the reason why I say that is look, it's very hard seeing Hill going down. But
It's
that
all downhill
injury,
for him.
Yes. Thank you, Alan. But we're going to go uphill. No, listen. So looking at what happened, right? Obviously, it's horrific, but it's the way they responded. Now, mind you, I don't want to get my hypes and I don't want to get too excited because it was the Jets. It was a home game, but they responded. And I don't think there's a talent issue with the Dolphins. I think there's a culture issue with the Dolphins. With Hill going down and having younger guys like Malik Washington step up and Waller coming out there having a game that he had, the two running backs that we can lean on that are two lightning and thunder, great combinations of each other. The next 4 games for them, you got the Panthers. The Chargers are going to be a tough game. But talking about how their O line looks, the health on their O line, our assets, our D line doesn't do anything better about our secondary, but we do have some type of leverage there. We have the Browns and we have the Falcons. Looking at those next 4 games, we can easily go either 2-2 or 3-1. And then it kind of just makes me feel a little bit better looking at the Dolphins, how they're looking. But the biggest is almost like an organization response of how Hill goes down and how we're going to respond as a team. Because if it's not responded correctly, you, me, everybody in this world knows that this team is going to go on a fire sale.
The problem is if they go 3-1, we're back to square one again where, you know,
We're eight
what
and
can this
nine.
team do? And then we're gonna get him. So I
So
mean,
I,
I've
I
got
get
one word to sum this up. Whatever with the Dolphins, just whatever. Like I don't know.
what a true fan.
It's the same. It's Groundhog Day. Like
It's the
I don't know what else to
same
say. Like
old Dolphins.
yeah, like it's I don't know. But
But
anyways,
that's it. We're done talking about the NFL. Let's talk about the kids.
all right. Jumping into the kids, and I gotta do my best to keep it reasonable because we're at the 40-minute mark almost. So that being said, I'm gonna go
Slick
six
little
teams.
jab towards me. All right, gotcha.
6 teams. 3 disappointing teams, 3 teams that have taken me by surprise. My disappointing teams, 2 of them are well, one's very obvious. Another one I think will be understandable, and the third one will be surprising. Number 1, clear and away, is Clemson. I mean, Clemson is just like okay,
Dog water.
I said they were gonna make the playoffs. I thought they would win the ACC because of that defensive line, because of all the returning production they had on both sides of the ball. I think it was close to 80% of it coming back, and this is a team that closed strong.
Wrong.
Thanks. This is a team that closed strong and made it to the playoffs and looked really good against Texas, right? But if you do a deep dive into Clemson, every time they face, and this is what I'm worried about with UM, but we'll get into that in another podcast. But every time UM faces a team that can match it body for body, and that's not in the ACC because there's basically 2 teams in the ACC that can do that with them. That's Florida State and Miami, and they don't always play Miami. And they play Florida State every year, and then Florida State's like up and down every year. But every time they face like an LSU, a Georgia, Texas, LSU. I said LSU already. But I was thinking of LSU in 2019. Ohio State in the playoffs a few years ago. They do not look good. And I might have been a year early on the downfall of Dabo because this team, again, the whole thing was to put it into perspective from a Florida State standpoint. Everybody's like, oh, this is 2024 Florida State. They're going to go 2-10. They're not going to be that bad. The problem was that comparison doesn't work because this was supposed to be their 2023 team of FSU. Because remember, in 2022, FSU went 10-3, and they evolved to 13-0.
Mhm.
Last year, Clemson was 9-3. This is where they evolve to go like, let's say 12-2 or whatever, you know? That's not happening. And it's just the fall off culture, whatever you want. Dabo's words aren't resonating with the veterans anymore. Whatever you want to say, something's going on at Clemson, and it seems like this is the year where the bleep hits the fan. So before I jump on to my number two team, do you have any thoughts about Clemson or any feedback on what I've said?
No, I think I'm aligned with it. To me, it's being a young, you know, follower and a fan of them. I've always looked and respected Clemson of the program, and they're always a tough team, and they've always had the talent and the defense, but it's looking like the bleep's hitting the fan. The grip of Dabo, looking at his team, I think he's losing it. He's losing the locker room, which is kind of funny because Clemson was nothing for the past decade until he came in, and for the past decade they
Decade plus.
became
Yeah,
relevant.
yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
he won the titles in, I think it was 2016, 2019 or something. No,
it's
2016 and 2018 or something like that. Because
it's just
2019
it's
was the
crazy. It's just crazy how a fan base can turn so quickly on a down year towards someone that built that program up. But it is what it is. I do agree. I think that is probably the biggest surprise.
and to me, sorry to interrupt, to me, talking about Dabo, I forgot to say one thing, but it popped into my mind now. The concerning part about is when, they had that close game against Troy or something like that, right? And then
Yes,
he went
yes.
on that rant,
Mhm.
a week later or, like, a few days later, and he goes, um talking about, maybe we'll go 6-6, throw and it's but, like, the thing that he said that really, like, caught my eye was talking about the expectations at Clemson, and he goes, "What about all those other teams, like, that aren't as good as us?" And it's like, this is where, like, I I give credit to James Franklin versus Dabo, because James Franklin, he's said in the past, he goes, "Listen, it's a testament to our team that if we have 2 losses, our fan base is disappointed." And he embraces that, even though he's gone 4-21 against top 10
Mhm.
teams and all that stuff, but he still lets his team know that it's okay to accept, like, to understand that, yeah, you got 10-2, it's disappointing. Dabo's going 9-3 and said, "Yeah, well, what about North Carolina?" Dabo, that's not the point. Like, you were the one who created these expectations with your perceived excellence. And now that it's up to you to right the ship, you're just saying, "Hey, you remember the good old days?" I think that's the big concerning part if you're a diehard Clemson fan, or even if you're a casual Clemson fan. Forget about losing the locker room like you're saying, you're losing the school. You're losing the
Yeah,
fan base
that's
on top
more.
of the locker room. So,
But
anyways,
I digress.
yeah. Number 2, yes, they're only 4-1, which is obviously a good record. I'm out on LSU. I thought they were gonna be good this year. I thought I didn't have
Was
them
it the
as
Ole Miss game? That's it? It just
no, it's a culmination of everything. Like,
okay.
if we really wanna get into the weeds, again, they got a lot of hype because of the Clemson game, going into Death Valley Junior at this point because he beat them in their homes. 17-10, yeah, they got the touchdown taken away, but let's say it's 24-10, right? Then you face Louisiana Tech 23-7. Then you face Florida 20-10. Then you face Southeast Louisiana and it's 56-10. Then you face Ole Miss 24-19. So even if we give them that phantom touchdown that got taken away against Clemson, they have not scored more than 25 points against a Power 4 team this year. And even like your one cupcake game against Louisiana Tech, you didn't do that great. And then you got the directional Louisiana game, and of course you went wild because they're probably like a D3 team at this point. But you had Garrett Nussmeier, who, by the way, Brian Kelly's like, hey, just so you guys know, Yeah, we all talked about, like, the knee injury he had before the season, but he also had, like, an, abdominal strain, which takes a few weeks to recover, so he's gonna be good for the difficult part of the schedule, guys. He's gonna be back to Garrett Nussmeier. Okay, Brian, let's take you for face value there. You still can't run the ball. Like, you have the defense this year. You had Jane Daniels for 2 years, and he was putting up, like, 50 points a game, and your defense was giving up 52. And now you finally got the guy, Blake Baker, on defense to kind of mold everybody into what you need them to be, and now your offense is mediocre. This is LSU. This is a team that produces wide receivers, like, generation after generation. This is a team that has good running backs. This is always a team that has athletes all over the field, and you can't figure out what to do with them. You're Brian Kelly. You're getting paid tens of millions. You got that $100 million contract.
Is it? Do you think it's so? Basically, what you're saying is it's not necessarily personnel. It's utilizing the athletes that you have because you do bring a good point. Like you think LSU, you think wide receiver university. They've always had a good running back room. They've always had athletes at the skill position. But it, my question to you is: are the athletes there, or has there been a drop off on those skill position players?
So, are the athletes there? Yes. When you say drop off, again, if we're comparing them to Odell, Justin Jefferson, Jarvis Landry, Jamar Chase, yeah, there's a drop off, but they still have like blue chip talent everywhere. The problem is like how you were forecasting stuff. They still got South Carolina, who's been again, I call them overrated to start the season, but they might have a strong enough defense to keep them in the game against them. Then you're at Vanderbilt, which is crazy to me that like we're even having this discussion that Vanderbilt is a tough opponent for LSU. Then you got Texas A&M, who I think is going to easily handle LSU. Then you're at Alabama. Alabama's Alabama's going to beat them. You're going to beat Arkansas, then you got Western Kentucky, and then you got Oklahoma. By that time, John Mateer is going to be healthy. Oklahoma has a championship level defense, like a top 10, top 8 level defense for sure. Like you're not going to meet expectations this season. Like you may go if you're lucky, you may go 9-3, but in real reality, I think if you're losing the A&M, Alabama, and Oklahoma game, you're at 8-4. And again,
You're out.
for a lot of teams, like 8-4 is solid, 8-4 is good, but this is year 4 under Brian Kelly, and year 1 and 2, I think you won 10 games, and you went to the SEC championship game in year 1, and now we're in year 4 and you're regressing. There's a lot of money spent on that transfer portal class. And once you beat Clemson, there was a certain amount of expectations. Garrett Nussmeier was perceived to be a high level QB that could easily be drafted in the first round in the NFL. And yeah, he's got injuries, but there's a lot of talent on this team on both sides of the ball. And you're gonna walk away at 8-4. Again, if you're lucky 8-4, whew, tough look.
Yeah, it's just like looking at the next 4 games. It's going to be very eye opening. So we're going to find out a lot.
My and
And that
my
seat's going
f-
to get hot.
yeah, my final disappointing team, it's the number 12 team in the country. It's Georgia. I mean, and the reason why I'm saying this is they're a victim of their own success under Kirby Smart. This is a perennial powerhouse. The problem is this year, that defensive line is not a quote unquote Georgia defensive line. Their offensive line, I think they finally figured it out, but it's weird that it took them 4 games in the season to figure out the best combination. And if we're looking at Georgia again, let's not talk about the first 2 games. It's Marshall and Austin P. The Tennessee game, again, like I know there was a little quirkiness involved with that game, but giving up 41 to Tennessee, I know it was at Rocky Top, but still.
I mean, Tennessee's a powerhouse on the offensive side of the ball. But
I
I don't want
mean,
to get too sidetracked from it, but
yeah, and then
you still got to give the respect to that.
you go to me, the concerning part is is when you watch that Alabama game.
That's what I was going to say, though. That sticks out to me more than the giving up 44 to Tennessee. The Bama game is more
It's
concerning.
the fact that you give up the 24 points. And remember what I told you and Miguel when we were watching the Tennessee game? When it was 21 nothing or 21-7, I told Miguel and
Mhm.
you, and I said, I need to see the second half. And sure enough, obviously they caught up and they kept the lead. The Alabama game, I said the same thing. I'm like, let me see the second half. They shut them out in the second half. It was 24-10 or whatever the score was going into halftime. The final score was 24-21. They did not score in the second half.
Mhm.
The mind-boggling part was you're at home and you're on the 8-yard line or whatever it was, and you go for it on 4th down, and you don't kick the field goal to tie the game. W You're not guaranteed a touchdown if you convert that 4th down. You still have to run 3 more plays, and then you have to make the decision again. Do I go for it? I don't understand, like, logically speaking, like, even if they went for it and they got it, you're telling me that they wouldn't have gone for a field goal if they were still, like, on the 8-yard line, they didn't gain anything? So you're telling me that the difference of 1 yard, you just wanted 3 more attempts at the end zone?
You
Like,
can also play the other side of that, that your defense, you just stated that they shut it out. They shut them out, and their defense is playing lights out, that you're confident enough that if you don't get this, your defense is gonna stop them. That's
the problem is, though, that they just
ran the ball.
I get what you're saying there. The problem is everybody forgets the next series of plays where they basically went 4 and out. So
Yeah.
it's like, that's the issue. Like, you go 4 and out, and then Bama just gets to eat the clock up again. Go for the tie. At least force Bama to try and run the
Yeah,
ball
move the ball.
and go for
Yeah.
deep shots and again, oh, the Georgia guy dropped the ball. Hey, by the way, Ryan Williams dropped the ball as well. So we can play that game where, oh, we would have scored a touchdown. Yeah, Ryan Williams would have scored a touchdown as well. So those cancel out. It's just weird. Again, the Georgia, it's just shocking in a sense of how mediocre they look in the trenches for a Kirby Smart team. Now they could still make the playoffs. Like I don't think that it's a
Yeah.
likelihood that they miss it. I mean, you could see them Kentucky, Auburn, those are wins. The Ole Miss game is at home. Florida is the neutral game. Mississippi State, the Texas game is going to be tough. So, and then you got Charlotte and Georgia Tech. I don't think by the time Georgia Tech gets to the end of the season, I'm not sure if
If
Haynes
that
King is
quarterback's
going to
gonna
be
be
in one
alive.
piece. Like,
Yeah, I
dear
know.
God, man. Like,
I
but
agree.
besides that, like, okay, they could be 10-2. The problem is the expectations for Georgia is you're going to be in the Final Four. This isn't a Final Four team, and this is a team that I'd be surprised if they make it to like the quarterfinals. And it's just that's why they're disappointing. Are they going to be a 10-win team? In all likelihood, probably, unless there's a lot more problems that haven't been exposed yet.
I would like to say, looking at Georgia, and if I was a Georgia fan, right? It's the best way to put it. You got rich people problems, which is the expectations of what the program has always been is we're always competing in the final four. And you just kind of like hit the nail on the head. If you do get to that opportunity, the team itself is not going to be able to deliver and have a chance in the final four like we've had confidently going into past seasons. But it's rich people problem. I do see where your concerns are or surprised, but uh, you know, it's a long season, and if there will be a bounce back for the team, and it's crazy because we're saying bounce back and they're 3-1 and they lost to Bama, but this team has the opportunity to completely, make the season of something and actually make some noise. So I'm not fully out on Georgia, but I can see where you're coming from.
It's the weight of expectations. Again, they're probably going to be a 10-win team,
Yeah,
but is that what you
exactly.
really want at Georgia at this point? Again, like you said, rich people belong. Speaking of rich people, my one of my surprising teams, I'll start off at number 2 because that was a good transition. Texas Tech. I thought Utah was gonna
Oh
be
yeah,
Utah was
yeah,
my favorite to win the Big 12, and, the Utah is kind of like a Big 10 team in the Big 12, which just sticks out because they're a physical team, and Texas Tech went into Utah, which is a very underrated place to play in. The home field advantage at Utah is very real.
yeah.
And they went in there and they said, "Man, we're struggling with our starter who had played well." They put in their backup and they just start putting up points left and right on Utah.
And
And
he can run.
yeah. And so the NILs paid off in the sense of like they retained Michael Hudson at wide receiver, who still hasn't really made an impact despite being like their highest rated recruit ever. And this is his second year there. But the money spent on defense is well deserved or well earned and well deserved. Yeah, we could say well deserved. Uh,
Yeah,
Utah is very similar in the sense of Florida State, where there's a lot of like eye candy. The discipline that Texas Tech played in that game,
yeah.
brilliant, brilliant. And I'm not sure if there's anybody. Big 12's weird. Big 12's like the ACC. You're going to lose
Hmm.
those weird games, but I just don't see how Texas Tech at this point doesn't come out of the Big 12 as the champion.
Undefeated.
Never lost. What's their schedule? Let me pull it up real
They
quick. Let
have
me see. Let me see.
Houston. Look, the two
Houston's
games
a
are
win,
obviously
Kansas is a win, Arizona State's not gonna be
yeah.
ranked because I think they have, like, some injury problems by the time they face them, they may not be
It's
ranked,
the
they could be.
BYU game. It's the BYU
Um,
and maybe West Virginia because that's just a game that I don't know that they can
that's
come.
like the classic Big 12 game where, like,
Yeah,
Rich Rod's gonna
exactly.
pull some magic, but, yeah, I mean, Arizona State is a tough one in BYU. I think Arizona State, they if everybody comes back healthy, I think, they have enough talent on offense with Levitt and their wide receiver, and
Hmm.
Kenny Dillingham is an amazing play caller, but you can afford to lose one at least, and then you still win the Big 12 championship game.
Exactly.
But
That's what
I'm
I'm
not
saying.
sure if they are gonna lose one. I think just the talent level that they have with all the NIL stuff and the recruiting that they've done. Again, when I say recruiting for them, they're recruiting at their level, not at like, Georgia or Texas's level. But, no, I'll say the
I'm
first
aligned with
one
it.
for
I'm
last.
aligned with it.
I'll kinda do it, like, in a weird order. Number 3, I know they were ranked, but, we're gonna talk about a team that, kinda like the Chargers, like, they always fall off every year. Texas A&M. I think that,
Oh.
historically, you had the Kevin Sumlin era with Johnny Manziel, and they would, start off great, and even after Manziel was there, and they had what was that guy's name? Kenny Hill or whatever it was. They started off
Mhm.
5-0 with him, and then they fell off. And then you had the Jimbo years where you would start off strong, and then it starts. Outside of that COVID year where they went 8-1, and like it was just freaky football that year. They didn't really reach their potential. I thought that Mike Elko was a great hire. It was not a flashy hire because Texas A&M has ungodly amounts of money, and they think they could buy whatever they need, you know? And Elko wasn't the quote unquote sexy hire, but this is a man who brought Duke back to like, relevance. And he was the defensive coordinator there previously. And he has really rebuilt the trenches there. And the
Mhm.
crazy part to me is, their QB, Marcel Reed, I think his name is. He's not really like a QB. He's a dual threat guy who isn't very accurate throwing the ball. He's kind of developed this year, but to me, that's the crazy part that if Texas A&M had a solid QB, I think they'd be one of the best teams in the country. And right now, they are still one of the top tier teams in the country at number 6. And I think their schedule is very, very manageable.
Yeah, I was
Mississippi
just looking
State
at that.
is a surprising team this year, but I don't think it's realistic. Florida's Florida. We've already talked about them. Arkansas's fired their head coach. LSU, again, I think they win in the trenches there. Missouri is a surprising team, but a talent advantage there. South Carolina, you're good. Sanford, you're good. I mean, the Texas game is going to be the one that all eyes are on. But again, even let's say you slip up against Texas. Is it unrealistic to say that Texas A&M could be a one-loss team at the end of the year with I mean, with the way
It's
they've
still
looked so
it's
far?
yeah, with the way they look so far, but it's still Texas. But I think just you got to get through that patch of UF. Even though I know we understand where UF is at, it's still a hard defense to play. Is it at UF? No, it's actually
No,
at
the key for me there
it,
is that it's at home.
it's at home. That's the thing.
Arkansas is
But
just absolute like, just a dumpster fire, so I'm not worried
you
about that.
know,
The LSU game's gonna
honest,
be tough.
I don't know. I mean, I'm with you. Um, it's it's not a slam dunk forecast of what the rest of the season's going to look like, but I do see how you're leaning towards what they've shown already.
Yep,
Um, you know, the jury's still out for me,
of course,
and I
yeah.
think I think you kind of hit it on the head. It's one of those teams that's like I can see them easily winning out, maybe losing one, but I can also easily see them dropping two or three
Yeah.
in my
Yeah,
mind.
because again, that quarterback thing might be an issue eventually.
Exactly.
My final team is the Fighting Lane Kiffins, Ole Miss. I mean, you lose Austin Simmons, I believe that's his first name, at QB, who immensely talented, but he had 4, interceptions in his first few games, and that's not really conducive to effective offense. They put in their backup quarterback, who is a JUCO quarterback, and he's done and by the way, his name is Trinidad Chambliss, and he's got 5 TDs, 1 interception, over 1,000 passing yards. So and that's he basically started the last 3 games against Arkansas, who isn't that great, but somehow they survived that game. Uh,
Mhm.
you easily beat LSU, and you beat Tulane, who's a strong team. They're not, like, great, but, like, Tulane might be one of those teams from the group of 5 that may make the playoffs, but you easily handle them. Again, the thing with Ole Miss is that schedule is, like
Well, dude, honestly, look, they're 3-0 in their conference, right?
yes.
You got 2 more. You got 2 more that are gonna be really testy, which is Georgia, but I honestly think Ole Miss takes it.
The Oklahoma
And
game, the key part there is I don't think John Mateer is gonna be back yet. So you're gonna have your dual threat quarterback who can't really throw the ball, in
and
there.
you have a possibility. I think going past those 2 games, you have a possibility of going undefeated for the season and being undefeated in your conference.
To me, like, that's peak, but even if they drop 1 of 2 against, like, Georgia and Oklahoma,
Yeah, they split.
and,
It
like,
splits.
worst case scenario, you lose both those games and you finish the season 10-2. Ole Miss at 10-2 is making the playoffs. But in all likelihood, they might be going
They're pro
11 and
they're
1.
they're probably in the champion and they're gonna be in the championship.
Yeah, so those are my surprising teams. Those are my interesting teams. I'm just gonna finish up real quick. To me, the SEC has more depth than any conference. I don't think they have as many championship contenders as people thought they did. I think the best teams are in the Big Ten. I think without a doubt, the number 1 and 2 teams in the country are Ohio State and Oregon. I think with the way the season plays out, UM's gonna be the 3rd best team in the country. Again, just one sentence about or a few sentences about UM. My only concern with UM is I'm judging them on a scale of you're going to make the playoffs. How do you match up against the elite teams? That's my concern with UM because I'm not comparing UM to
You think they're Penn
anybody.
State?
I don't they're a better offense than Penn State. I trust their offense more than Penn State.
But the way that you the way that you're phrasing it is almost like a Penn State type of
No, because the problem is we've seen Penn State year in and year out do this like song and dance. Like UM has just finally like gotten to the point where like, okay, we've got the coordinators, we've got
Mhm.
the talent, like everything's coming together. How do you match up against Ohio State? How much do you match up against I mean, again, if Alabama keeps on developing the way that they do, how do you manage to match up against Alabama? I was gonna say Texas because Texas has, like, an elite defense.
Mhm.
There's still way too many question marks on
Check that.
offense for
On
Texas.
offense, yeah.
So, how do you match up against Oregon? Like, that's the unfortunate aspect with UM is that's how I'm judging them. I'm judging them against the elite teams and not their conference because to me, if UM doesn't win the ACC this year, Eric, like, conversations need to be had. No, they're not gonna do anything, but this is just this is the perfect storm, you know? FSU's
It's
recovering
a
from a
perfect
2 and
hurricane.
there you go. Starring Mark Wahlberg and George Clo no. Perfect storm no. Anyways, it's just one of those things where Clemson is clearly on the downswing and FSU, which we'll discuss shortly. And then who else is in the ACC? I mean, like Louisville, they're fun. But that being said, that wraps it up for our quarterly review of the NFL and the NCAA. Coming up next, we're going to do a deep dive into the rivalry of rivalries. It's the best rivalry in college football. I don't care what anybody says. FSU. And we'll have our picks for that game. And we'll also do our podcast for the picks. So look out for all that stuff, folks. You know the drill. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe, follow, throw us comments, do all that stuff. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time here on 305 Insights. Have a good one, folks.